feed now, and we should be streaming live in the next couple of seconds.
Good to go, Amy?
Good to go.
Great. So good morning, everyone. My name is Nate Libby. I serve as Senate Chair of the Government Oversight Committee, and I am calling this remote virtual meeting to order. For folks who are watching and for the committee, this meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and is being recorded for posting to the Government Oversight Committee's YouTube channel. As a reminder, the YouTube feed is turned on now, and it will be on for the remainder of the meeting until we complete our work. If you're on the Zoom platform and your camera and microphone are on, whatever you say or do will be seen or heard, even during breaks. Please remember to mute yourself when you are not speaking. I'm not sure if I see any members of the committee who are zooming in from the committee room, but I'll say this anyway. For members who will be participating from the committee room, please know that you'll need to use your laptop and device microphone for this meeting rather than the room's microphone to speak. Please leave the room microphones off during this meeting. The interim director and Etta will participate via Zoom, but they will not be in the physical committee room. All of our meeting materials have been mailed or distributed electronically to all committee members before the meeting. Those materials were also posted on the OPEGA website at the start of this meeting under the GOC meetings tab of the website. And the director may share documents on the screen as necessary over the course of this meeting. Today's meeting has a public comment period, so we are on a slightly different platform than we were a couple of weeks ago. We are in a Zoom webinar platform. I'll talk a little bit more about how the public comment period will go later on in our agenda, but the short version is still the same. The chair will recognize members or others to participate in a variety of ways. You can use, if you'd like to speak or ask a question, you can use the raise hand function in Zoom. You can raise your physical hand or wave it into the camera to grab our attention. And you can also use the chat function to ask to speak. The chat function, though, should really only be used for those kinds of things. And the chat function should not be used for any substantive discussion or committee business because the public cannot see that. Please limit using the chat to either getting the attention of the chair or for any help you may need with technical issues. One of our OPEGA analysts will be monitoring the chat for any technical issues you may be experiencing, and they'll respond to you via chat. And if they can assist you, they'll get you connected with the IT department to help out. A reminder that members must be verifiable through audio and video to register their vote. So with that bit of housekeeping out of the way, I'd like to have committee members introduce themselves. And at the last meeting, I asked folks to introduce themselves based on the order on my screen. But of course, realizing that other folks can't see that going forward, I'll ask folks to introduce themselves based on how we were named to this committee. So I'll begin with Representative McDonald.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Representative Genevieve McDonald. I represent House District 134, which are the offshore islands of Penobscot Bay and Western Frenchman's Bay.
Thank you. Senator Khan.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Kime, and I proudly represent Senate District 18, which is northern Oxford County and 2 communities in Androscoggin.
Senator Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Donna Bailey. I represent Senate District 31, Saco, Old Orchard Beach, Hollis, Leamington, and part of Buxton.
Senator Bennett, is he here? No. Okay. Senator Timberlake.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Senator Jeff Timberlake. I represent District 22 in Androscoggin and Kennebec County.
Senator Vitelli.
Good morning. I'm Senator Eloise Vitelli. I represent the 10 towns in Saginaw County and the town of Dresden in Lincoln County.
Thank you. And I'll just pause for a moment to let staff know that Representative Arata needs to have the link resent to her. If Matt could send that over, that would be great.
I got it.
Oh, Representative Arata is here. Great.
Yes,
So Representative Dillingham.
Good morning, Representative Dillingham, represent House District 72, which is towns of Oxford, Otisfield, and Mechanic Falls in Western Maine.
Representative Arata.
Hello, my name is Amy Arata and I represent District 65, which includes New Gloucester and part of Poland.
Representative Millett.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sowen Millett. I represent House District 71, which includes the citizens of Norway, Sweden, Waterford, and West Paris.
Representative O'Neill.
Good morning. My name is Maggie O'Neill, and I represent House District 15, which is in Saco.
And Representative Stover.
Good morning. My name is Holly Stover. I represent House District 89, including 6 coastal towns of Boothbay Harbor, Southport, Edgecombe, Westport Island, and part of South Bristol.
Thank you. And I am Nate Libby. I represent all of the people of Lewiston in the Maine Senate, and again serve as Senate co-chair. We are joined today by a number of OPEGA staff, but I'd like to name 3 of them. Matt Kruk, serving as interim director of OPEGA, Amy Gagne, who is a senior analyst and assisting us in operating this remote meeting, and Etta Connors, who is our clerk, taking our notes today. So with that, the first item on our agenda is summary of the January 29th, 2021 GOC meeting. And I'm asking the committee if those notes look good to you, and if they are, without objection, we'll accept them as written. Seeing no objection. Next, move on to new business. So today we are going to be conducting a public hearing on our work regarding the Maine Commission of Indigent and Legal Services. And again, some of this I touched on earlier in the meeting, but I think it's good to go over it once again. So as I've said, today's meeting has a public comment period, and we're in a slightly different platform than we were using last time, which is a Zoom webinar. If you'd like to testify today, many of you have already registered for the Zoom webinar and sent written testimony to OPEGA's Administrative Secretary, Etta. But we recognize that this is a new process for many folks. And so if you are watching today and are interested in participating in this discussion, and you haven't been able to register for the webinar but would like to testify, we'd ask you to go to OPEGA's website now under the GOC Meetings tab. There you'll find information on how to register to give testimony today. And once you register, you'll receive an email to connect you to Zoom or to dial in. A bit about our process today. We will be promoting webinar attendees to panelists one by one so that folks from the public can give their testimony. Then after your testimony is concluded, we will be, quote, demoting you back to an attendee when you're finished, and members have no further questions. And then we'll move on to the next person. Please know that promoting and demoting are Zoom terms. They do not imply any kind of misconduct when we're talking about demotion. But please be aware that when you are promoted or demoted, it may appear that you've been kicked out of the meeting, but that is not the case. That's just Zoom reassigning you from one role to another. I'm going to read the names of the first 3 people that we have on our list to testify so that you can be prepared to give your testimony when it's your turn. As we near the end of those 3 testifiers, I'll then read the names of the next 3 people to testify, and so on, until we've gone through all of the list of registrants. After this, I will ask if there are any other people wishing to testify. And at that time, please use the raise hand function if your name has not been called. It would be greatly appreciated if, when you are done offering your testimony, that you exit the Zoom meeting. And if you want to, you can continue to watch the rest of the meeting on the committee's YouTube channel. And again, the YouTube channel can be found on the GOC's website. If you need to exit the meeting before being called to testify, please be aware that you may submit written testimony at any time by emailing the GOC committee clerk. The purpose of this meeting is for the GOC to receive comment from the public on the Maine Commission on Indigent Legal Services report. First on the list that we'll have, actually before I get to that, are there any questions or comments from the committee before we open the public comment period? I'm not seeing any hands. So with that, I will open the public hearing on the Maine Commission on Indigent Legal Services report. First person that I have will be presenting is the MCILS Interim Executive Director, Justin Andrus. Good morning, Mr. Andrus.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Esteemed legislators, thank you for this opportunity. I have 2 very brief prefatory remarks. The first is that this is day 24 of my tenure in this organization, and I am very proud to be able to report back on some of the things that we've done and are doing to address shortcomings identified in the OPEGA report and the Sixth Amendment Center report, and things that we see that are outside of reports. But there are things I still don't know. And our Deputy Director, Ellie Masiag, is here, as is Commission Chair Josh Tardy and Commissioner Cummins. And it may be that I turn to them for an answer. I'll ask for your patience with me in doing that. Also, this is my first trip through the executive branch. And there are aspects of this procedure that I'm not acquainted with yet. And so I invite your direction and also ask for your patience in that respect. I also would like to tell you just very briefly who I am. I've been a licensed attorney in Maine since October of 2002. For all of that time, until September of 2019, I practiced law as a privately licensed attorney. I had a private practice representing clients generally and indigent defense, and representing indigent parents and others for whom MCILS has responsibility was part of my practice. And so I have a deep experience and a broad perspective on that. Prior to that, for a year, I was at the Cumberland Legal Aid Clinic, where I also served indigent clients. From September 2019 to December 2020, I served first as special bar counsel and then as assistant bar counsel at the Maine Board of Overseers of the Bar, where I parlayed what had been practice focus on assisting attorneys in the ethical practice of law by providing private ethics opinions and practice advice into doing that directly for the Board of Overseers. So I have some experience in both the systems level stuff and the implementation of that stuff when it comes to assisting attorneys in performing as they are expected to perform. It's something I both know and am comfortable doing. I began this job on January 19th. When I left the Board of Overseers, I left because I was interested in resuming serving clients individually primarily, and I was looking forward to opening my private practice. I was aware that the position of the Executive Director of MCILS was available, and though I don't presume I would have been chosen, I would have been a plausible candidate. I chose not to apply. and I'm going to talk in the course of my testimony about why I chose not to apply and why I still haven't applied. Josh Tardy, Commission Chair, approached me in December and asked me to serve, followed by Justice Alexander. I agreed to do that because the mission of MCILS is vitally important, and bringing MCILS into compliance with the Sixth Amendment, with our statutory obligations and with our fiscal obligations is essential. And so I was willing to put aside my intent to return to private practice as a principal activity for a while and undertake this. And so as I go through this, I'm going to identify some issues, some of which I knew about before I joined and some that I identified after I joined the commission as its interim executive director. But I believe that the fact that MCILS had to recruit me illustrates the reality that as it exists right now, what is asked of the commission is an impossible task. So I'm very proud to tell you what we've achieved, but very much need your support and the support of everyone who is dedicated to seeing the Sixth Amendment mission served adequately to help us develop the structure that we need to provide adequate oversight. And I recognize and want to acknowledge that in our Judiciary Committee meeting last week, we received the support of that committee to add staff to our internal operations. Thank you for that support to the members of that committee. We need that support to continue because we cannot accomplish the mission without it. So let me pause there for a moment. I can go through the report and talk about specific things we've done, but if members would prefer to ask me what they'd like to know, I'm also happy to address questions. Mr. Chair, do you have a preference how I proceed?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Andrus. I think typically what we have done is asked for members of the public or interested parties to give a presentation and be mindful of your time there, given that we do have others who are interested in speaking this morning as well. So if you are willing to, please proceed with giving your presentation. And at the end, we can have committee members provide response or ask questions if appropriate.
Very well. Thank you. When I arrived at this office, I accepted the OPEGA report as a sort of fundamental checklist. It's not a checklist that leads us to ultimately the performance that we want to provide, but it was certainly a checklist of the baseline deficiencies that y'all had identified for us. And I am proud to report that on every front that I can identify from the OPEGA report, we have begun making progress. We have either developed and communicated billing standards. We have revised our processes for attorneys to input data into our system to improve the quality of the data. We have engaged JusticeWorks. Let me pause for a moment. JusticeWorks is the vendor that provides our billing platform called Defender Data. I have a tendency to use the terms interchangeably. They both mean the same thing for our purposes today. I have engaged JusticeWorks to begin the process of implementing user-level checks for data validity, including clearing typos and ensuring that the sort of elemental data that gets put in is granular and accurate. I have moved ultimately in our procedures, the baseline voucher checking function to that feature, because the baseline voucher checking function is an effective means to address typographic issues, but ultimately doesn't address the fraud issues. In the meantime, we're working with JusticeWorks to develop and implement true database level access to the data for MCILS directly, so that we can do our own queries and identify through that patterns of billing that are suspect and give us an opportunity to check them. I want to say clearly that we started out talking about high billing events, and we moved to talking about risk events, because from a Sixth Amendment perspective, in addition to the issue of overbilling, underbilling could represent a quality of services issue. And so we'll be using that feature and function to identify both sets of those kinds of issues. We have begun to identify what those risk triggers should be. Some of them, for example, there are the 12-hour emails that are referenced in the report. We've begun to implement requirements that people provide substantive answers. I have a flow I expect to push out next week that will call for people to certify under oath that either the numbers are correct or that they've been corrected, and to repay us for overpayments. The audit functions that the OPEGA report identified to us, we have begun developing. We're going to need, and I believe we have the support of the legislators and the executive to tidy up the statute and our rules to ensure that we have a robust process there that will allow us to do that. The area toward the end of the report that identifies the 4 statutory elements that the commission hadn't yet adopted standards. We have begun that process. We're in early days for that. The focus so far has been triaging the financial issues as quickly as we can. What I anticipate doing over the next weeks is communicating with my colleagues in similar positions in other states to survey how they do it and begin to have a robust review. We've asked judiciary for 2 people, judiciary in the supplemental budget. Those 2 people were an attorney and the paralegal level person. The attorney would take on a role responsible for ensuring quality insurance. The paralegal level person would be involved specifically in reviewing for financial standards. I'm missing something. Oh, sure. And we're also updating the process by which attorneys request non-counsel funds for investigators and experts. And what I'd like to do, I need to make sure that I may do this, but is develop a standardized billing form that they must use to be paid by us. That will allow us to receive the data in a manner that is subject to review. Then, parallel to all of that, and so when I say we're doing all of that, all of those tasks, to the extent that those were technical, now lie with JusticeWorks. We did check in with them this morning. I'd hoped I could give you a time frame update. They're not yet ready to do that based on what they're reporting to us. But we have reported that out to them, and all those things are happening. In addition, we're working with OIT to develop our own, I think it'll be an access database, but it will become Oracle as the state is making a migration. That's going to allow us to bring all of the communications that we have with our attorneys into a structured database system where it will then be possible to regulate and evaluate that data. Because one of the things that has happened so far is there's a lot of paper, and it's very difficult to go back and determine qualifications, when qualifications were achieved, or if they were lost, or to address issues related to non-counsel vouchers, billing, things like that. So we began working on that earlier this week, and I anticipate that within a week or so, we're going to have access. So I think the time frame was. We're going to have access to that database. We're then going to be able to determine what data we need on the fly once we have that capability. So we'll be able to begin to bring all of that stuff, including investigations, financial investigations, into process. Then next, in terms of our relationship to the attorneys who contract to us, we have, I can't speak to anything with great specificity on this subject, but we have begun the process of investigating those instances that appear to us to implicate either a failure to perform adequately or questions related to billing. And I need to be necessarily vague on the subject people are probably most interested in. I would do my best to answer questions about that if they arise at some point. All of that is rolling. The threshold I've established is that if we receive any information that is colorably a complaint or colorably could give rise to a complaint or question about a person's efficacy or about a person's billing, then it gets investigated. And I've begun by using some of what I learned at the Board of Overseers to frame that inquiry. Pardon me while I collect my thoughts for just a moment. Going forward, we need people. We can implement and build all of the structures to do all of these things, and we're doing that. Practically speaking, it is impossible for the staff that we have now to continue to add these tasks and to do them in an adequate manner. operating the organization requires full-time staff time that we have now. When you add to that correcting the issues of the past, identifying new paths forward, implementing those new paths forward, and then engaging in the sort of investigative work that those new paths forward implicate and suggest, and the training that those new paths forward to some of the places identified by the Sixth Amendment report, that is not stuff that for-office staff can do. And I often talk about there being two of us because there are two attorney staff. We do have two non-attorney staff, and I want to recognize them as well. We absolutely, positively are going to require more people to do that job. And so, again, for you all and for those who are listening, ultimately, we need to be resourced at a lot of levels. But we need to be resourced immediately for the agency level tasks that are necessary to demonstrating compliance and oversight. To the extent that there's a conditional situation where somebody would ask us to demonstrate that compliance as a precondition to getting that staff, it is a task that cannot be done. We do not have the hours now to prove to you what we might need to prove to you in order to unlock the purse strings for the office staff. And so, again, my thanks to Judiciary last week, but we're going to need that. To the extent that your committee or PEGA has the ability to participate, we certainly welcome and invite that. I don't know ultimately what resources there are or what tasks you can undertake, but we're willing to accept help from all quarters toward that mission. So I think I will stop there because I'm going to get too far in the weeds about the specific things we're doing, and I will remain available, of course.
Thank you, Director Andrus. And before I go to the committee for questions, I omitted one part of my piece of today's agenda, which is to talk about who's on deck to speak next. So following Director Andrus will be Deputy Director Masiag, followed by Commission Chair Josh Tardy, and then Commissioner Robert Cummins. So that will be the order of the next three speakers after Director Andrus has completed his portion. So with that, we will open it up to questions or comments from the committee. Seeing none, we will next hear from Deputy Director Masiag. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Ellie Masiag. I have no prepared remarks. Justin did an excellent job explaining what we've been working on since he came on board, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? I see Senator Khan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ellie, just one today, and I appreciate the overview that Justin gave, and of course we heard that much of that already in the Judiciary Committee. But would you have anything specific to anything to add that's specific to the report that was given to us from OPEGA? Any specific comments around that?
No, I don't have any specific comments. No.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, we'll next hear from MCILS Commission Chair, the Honorable Josh Tardy. Good morning.
Good morning, Senator Libby, Representative McDonald, distinguished committee members. I'm Joshua Tardy. I'm a resident of Newport, and I am the chair of the Maine Commission on Indigent Legal Services. I'll be very brief. I would just like to say that I'm optimistic and enthusiastic about Justin Andrus stepping up into this interim role. I can see on day 24 he's counting his time in real time and in minutes, that he's moved the needle, that he's made progress. And he, as he testified, the OPEGA report was a very important initial checklist that provided guidance and a framework for how he would onboard and look under the hood at the commission. I believe that the progress is being made, in particular in the area of billing procedures and financial accountability. I'm encouraged that there are active investigations of billing practices, and I believe strongly that that what the OPEGA report concluded, what the Judiciary Committee has concluded, what the Sixth Amendment Center report has concluded, and every outside group that's looked under our hood, that in order for us to be sustainable and to provide at a constitutionally required level, we need more resources. I am encouraged with the dynamic leadership that Justin's provided. I can see that we're already making positive change. I do believe, however, that our staff is performing at a maximum level, and we're going to need help because it's simply unsustainable. And we can get into the particulars of how many vouchers are reviewed on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, and how much time that takes to do any type of meaningful review. And I can tell you how much time it takes on a daily basis to provide quality assurance and proper mentorship. And I can tell you that there aren't enough humans tasked with main commission duties. And so we are looking for ways through the budget process to affect positive change going forward. And I'm very, however, encouraged that that we have an executive director who's responsive to the critical assessments made by your committee's work. With that, I'll conclude my remarks, Mr. Chair, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Tardy. Any questions from the committee? I do have one question. Commissioner Tardy, obviously this is quite a step in our process for taking a look at MCILS over the last couple of years. I think what we understand is that the work is very much in progress, and there's a long road ahead. I think in the work session, we're going to be discussing next steps. And I think one of the things we may consider is having MCILS report back to us on a regular basis over the coming 12 to 24 months. Would you be open to assisting us in that sort of process?
Absolutely. I think the more that we are under a microscope, the more it's in the public interest. And I think that's fundamental to our task as a commission and part of our oath.
Great. Thank you. Senator Kime has her hand raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Tardy, is there, speaking of next steps, is there anything specific, because that will become our topic of discussion after today's public hearing, is there anything specific that you or the commission would like to see OPEGA take on, or any charge to the committee itself that you feel is important for us to? I mean, we still have a further scope to discuss of OPEGA's work. Just didn't know if you had any comments around that.
Certainly. Given that we are, especially given the time and the part of the calendar that we're in between budgets, in the context of a supplemental budget, as we prepare, our biennial budget presentations to the appropriators and to the various committees, your committee in the OPEGA agency may be able to provide audit-related functions that could help us on a financial transparency and accountability standpoint. But how that's actually implemented, I would yield to Mr. Andrus, and I also know that Commissioner Carey, who chairs our financial accountability subcommittee, has some specific thoughts on how those resources could be best deployed. But my macro view is that if there are resources that are willing to be expended And looking under the hood of the main commission, as a commissioner and the commission on whole, I believe I can say for the commission on whole that we welcome it. And we think that that's the way to actually inspire public confidence, enhance public confidence. And I think that you'll find that that a lot of what we do is very good. The high percentage of our attorneys are extremely competent, provide great representation, and I think you'll see that a high percentage are very competent in their billing practices. But we acknowledge the public criticisms, and so we accept that human resources can be expended, and if it's an audit, we'll take it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions for Commission Chair Tardy? Seeing none, thank you. And we'll move on to MCILS Commissioner Robert Cummins. Good morning.
Good morning, and distinguished members of the committee. I'm new to Maine. I was licensed here 6 years ago after spending 5 or so decades involved in the representation of indigents, both in state and federal court. I considered it a great privilege to be appointed to this commission. I'll simply emphasize something that has probably less to do with the OPEGA report and more to do with our state's mandate that we provide efficient, high-quality legal representation to indigents as articulated in the statute. I'm somewhat surprised, and I don't mean to sound pejorative, but I'm somewhat surprised that there weren't questions from this committee when Justin articulated as a premise for his presentation that Maine is not complying with the Sixth Amendment, and that we are, as a commission, unable to fulfill our statutory duties. That's been a problem in Maine for decades. The focus on efficiency is wonderful, but it's less important, in my judgment, than the mandate to represent the indigent with quality services, with the necessary funds to investigate. The lawyers who have generously volunteered their services to assist the indigent in this state are grossly underpaid. The hourly rate is embarrassment. The lack of funding for forensic and ancillary services in a particular criminal case are woefully deficient. So it seems anomalous to me to discuss the financial aspects of a commission's performance when the task of the commission is so woefully underfunded that it becomes a serious question as to whether or not Maine, the executive, legislative, and judicial branches are really committed to provide the kinds of services our indigents require. I'm assuming very few of the people on this this Zoom network have been arrested. I assume that very few people on this Zoom network have been charged with the crime and had to go to trial. I've been doing this stuff for 6 decades. I've seen it function in an efficient fashion with meager funds in other circumstances. I've never seen a system so deficient in terms of assuring compliance with the Sixth Amendment as obtains here in Maine. It's an embarrassment. And Representative Keim raised a question. Are there any specific things that can be done? There sure are. In our budget proposal, we requested funding for a pilot project for public defender service in Kennebec County. That's been rejected. The bottom line from my perspective, putting aside the inability to deal, well, my interest is less in the ability to account for funds and so forth. I'm not a financial guy. I'm a trial lawyer. We need to restructure and reform the representation of indigents in the state of Maine. We need the funds to do that. We need the support of the judicial, executive, and legislative branches to do that. We need the support of the organized bar to do that. And to date, regrettably, and from my perspective, after spending 60 years of my life and doing this sort of stuff, it ain't happening, and it's got to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cummins. Are there questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Commissioner. Next on my list, I'll list the next 3 I have in line. MCILS Commissioner the Honorable Michael Carey, followed by Keegan Fairfield, and then Jane Langdon Gray. And Commissioner Carey, I understand from the chat, you are here to answer any questions the committee has, but you're welcome to offer any remarks as well. Good morning.
Hi, thank you very much, Senator. Again, my name is Michael Carey. I'm a commissioner of the Maine Commission on Indigent Legal Services and currently chairing the subcommittee for financial responsibility. My colleagues on that subcommittee are Commissioner and former Senator Cates, the retired Justice Alexander, a rostered attorney, Don Hornblower, another rostered attorney and an advocate for the defense bar and defendants, Tina Netto, and Zach Hayden, who is with the ACLU. The specific, we've had a number of meetings and had robust debate among us with staff and have taken public comment, detailed public comment, and I refer you to the written record that this I believe almost all, if not all if the comments are from rostered attorneys and very thoughtful with some really great suggestions, and specifically some of the risk flags that we're looking to adopt came from the bar. The specific suggestions and the next step forwards have been reported by Justin. We are unanimously supporting the work that he's doing to in the interim period to kind of bring us into line where we need to be. And so I guess I'm happy to answer any questions. And I guess I will say kind of one of I will echo what Josh said and what Justin had indicated. The level of staffing that's on the commission right now is, I think it's critical that we look to that auditing going forward basis to fix the future. That is and that needs to be the focus, along with getting the IT changes and continuing to do the oversight that needs to be done. That needs to be the focus, and particularly as the staff is underfunded as it is now. As we're looking to the past, which is is an area for audit focus, and one that I agree with and would like to see done. That would be a place where we'd love to have OPEGA staff and with the support of your committee to help do that and to help us look at that. My understanding is that the level of the data, and I'm not surprised to hear this, the level of data is sufficiently inconsistent that will require more in-depth work than simply database queries as we hope to do in the future. That is a place where we can have help. And I guess the last point that I would make is my focus has mostly been on fixing the financial pieces. And I'd ask the commission to, the committee to be aware that there is the commission has not met some basic statutory standards, which are needed to comply with the Sixth Amendment, including has not passed rules for evaluating and overseeing attorneys. That was a requirement that was put in a statute in 2009. And that is an embarrassment that that's not done. And frankly, to me, that's a function of resources, among other things. So I would make those points and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Carey. Are there questions or comments from the committee? Seeing no questions from the committee, Commissioner Carey, I do have a question. I've heard that some of the folks involved in MCILS are interested in talking with OPEGA about assisting in future audits. As you know, OPEGA has a number of items on their work plan, and whenever we task them with taking on a major project like this, it does impact the other items on the work plan. So are you able to speak at all to other discussions you've had about audit resources, whether that's with the state auditor's office, hiring internal to have that capacity on a permanent basis, or going external and hiring an audit team to help going forward? Have you given thought to that piece?
Sure. Yes, and I guess I first, and I kind of reference this, I distinguish between audits on a going forward basis, which is a function of which is and needs to be a function of staff, and so that we frankly do not, the commission and the state does not find itself in this position again. And I distinguish between looking back at the past and some of the specific practices that have been reported on in the OPEGA report and other reports. That's the place where I think that there is it would be helpful to have additional resources. Now, as to where those resources could come from, one of the positions that Justin spoke to that was unanimously supported by the Judiciary Committee to add to the supplemental budget is a paralegal level position. That is legal speak for the classification, not state government speak, to help with review and audits. And my understanding is that is needed for the forward-looking audit process. So that's the internal processes. In terms of all other resources to spend on this, at this point, we have, my understanding is that we have the resources to finish the fiscal year to pay attorneys. We have, because of COVID, have a cash flow benefit in the sense that the funds have not been expended, and we should be able to carry over some funds. The specific accounting details are beyond the scope here, but we should have funds to carry over. We do expect those funds to be used, and then some. There is not an indication that the decline in cases that we've seen during the COVID period has meant that those have gone away, but those have been pushed out, so that we don't have. I don't have a sense that there are existing resources, and setting aside the point that's setting aside the point that I agree with Commissioner Cummings raised about the low level of pay for the attorneys that do very good work by and large. So that's my view of existing resources. In terms of outside resources, I think Senator, it was your suggestion in the last meeting that we talk to the state auditor. I have spoken with the office there. I've spoken with them. I've raised the issue in two regards. I think first, given them a heads up that request was made, and that is something that we may be having a conversation about in the future. They were very clear that their annual work period, kind of the crux of that period is right now. And so the additional resources from what they had expected was far more polite, but I was not, did not have the sense that there was that time there. I also asked for, and the specific ask for now was the request to join the financial subcommittee as a member to give some of that auditing and forensic accounting expertise. And so that is a piece that's still ongoing. So I don't expect there to be significant resources from there for the next few months, which I think is really the period that we're talking about. And so that's kind of where, you know, I certainly don't want to leave the impression that we've given up hope in terms of getting additional resources on a going forward basis to do audits of the past. That becomes a question of priority, and my strong priority is that we fix the future and not find ourselves in that position again. And right now, even with these additional resources, I don't see additional 2 resources on top of the 4 that we have. I don't see a lot of time there to be able to devote to past audits.
Thank you, Commissioner Curry.
Thank you, Senator.
Are there any other questions or comments from the committee for Commissioner Curry? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, Senator, I do not see Keegan Fairfield or Corey McKenna in the attendees list. If they would like to join later, I'm happy to add them. I do see 2 additional people, Kenneth Capron and Rob Kilgore. If they would like to speak, I would recommend they raise their hand and let me know.
Great. Thank you, Representative McDonald. Again, just for the benefit of the public, I'll name the next 3 folks I have in order, understanding some of them may not be here. Keegan Fairfield, Jane Langdon Gray, Corey McKenna are next up on our list. And looks like of those present, I'd like to call on Jane Langdon Gray. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I am a MCILS rostered attorney. I'm a solo practitioner, currently working out of Newcastle. I mostly work in Rockland rather than the closer quarter in Wiscasset because the need is greater there. I've been rostered with MCILS since I started practice in 2017. I should probably disclose that I interned and worked for Justin Andrus for about 1.5 years. So far today, I've been really pleased and kind of excited by the testimony I've heard. My main observations of how the commission has run so far, even before OPEGA's report, would be definitely a focus on tech database access. I used to work for Wayfair as an online retail operations analyst. And my work there primarily consisted of interacting with the database and, you know, hearing that we're going to be able to access data at a direct level is huge. The other thing that I would certainly like to suggest or support is the under-resourcing. I was dumbfounded when I found out how many staff MCILS actually had, just knowing the number of vouchers or, you know, data items that I enter in any given week. And I certainly enter a lot less than other people. Sometimes I honestly don't know how they've dealt with it this far. So I would underscore the request so far for resources, staff. I think that's hugely important. I would also like to support the commission and what they've done so far. Despite the inefficiencies noted, I've never had anything but great support from the commission. They've always been responsive to my queries. I get paid for the work I do, and I get the money I need for cases. I'd also like to point out that myself, and I'd say most of the other MCILS rostered attorneys, we get paid to do what we love. And yes, we deserve to be paid more, but I think when I say resources, I mean staff for the commission. That's what they need to give efficient service. The only other thing I would say, and I see that happening today, and I think having the report and public scrutiny has led to this, is that there does need to be further dialogue, integration, communication with MCLS and sort of the greater, I suppose you'd say, political community in Maine. I think getting more support, that's important. And I believe Justin Andrus is the person to do it. He'll communicate and do whatever he needs to do. So I was excited to hear that he was taking the position as interim director. That's all I would like to say at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Langdon Gray. Are there questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next up on my list, I just saw that Corey McKenna has joined us. Good morning, Corey.
Good morning and thank you. Can you hear me? I apologize for being tardy. I'm actually in court via Zoom on another device. And so I will be brief so the judge does not get upset. I just wanted to let the committee know that I think I've been practicing my entire career in court-appointed defense. It started in law school in the summer between my first and second years at a small law firm that did only court-appointed defense. And ever since that and the decade that's followed, I've now graduated on to my own practice where I focus solely on court-appointed criminal defense. And I have a partner that does not, but I'm very thankful for that partner because she is able to allow me or allows me to continue on to do court-appointed defense at the current rate that gets paid. While I'd certainly like to see a rate increase, I realize that that is not really the primary focus. And I don't believe that it is. I think the primary focus should be on getting more staffing for MCLS. I've watched it somehow miraculously function over the past decade with only about 3 employees. And for whatever failings they may or may not have, I think it is nothing short of a miracle that they've been able to dole out $18 million so budget, try to finagle 500 or so attorneys. It is a difficult, tall task. But I hope that, and I stress that the number one priority I see as someone from the inside is getting enough staffing for MCLS as soon as possible so that we can implement some of the great things that we've really started to do under the interim executive director, Andrus. I really look forward to having higher standards. I look forward to having more oversight. I look forward to being able to prove to both the public at large, our clients, and the state that we have an excellent court-appointed system. And the only way to do that, I believe, is to have the staffing adequate enough to be able to show that service is being delivered at the highest level, and that the representation is the quality that I know it is, which I believe is a very, very, very high quality. And I think we're very lucky to have the unique system that we have in Maine. I believe that having private attorneys is a unique advantage in that it brings people that want to do this to the table. It brings very experienced people to the table, and it lets them work more as an attorney and less as part of a system. And so I hope that this committee hears the call. I'm not sure what other people have testified to today, that I believe funding for staffing is certainly the most important. And from that, everything else will flow, I believe, in the future. and only positive things to come. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I'll stay on for a moment.
Thank you. Mr. McKenna, are there any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. I'll get back to court. Thank you.
Next on my list, I have Dwight Hines, followed by Rob Kilgore and Kenneth Capron. So Dwight Hines has joined us. Good morning. Mr. Hines, you are on mute.
I don't remember what I said. No, I have a great deal of respect for OPEGA and the work they do in specific cases and in general. My concern is that the low pay of the attorneys, you're right on target there. The other one is that there are people, there's prevention things we can do. There are a lot of people who go pro se and self-represented in courts, and many are right on the cusp of being indigent. And I think there are ways to look at that group and reduce the number of people that are needing indigent services. I've got some data on, it's anecdotal on some of it, others just national data from National Center for State Courts and places like that. I think you need to make some strategic alliances with this, with businesses. Economic development, we have to have lawyers working on that. They know the structure, they write contracts, they do everything right. I've seen a business, one at least in our little town of Livermore, go out of business. He didn't have a lawyer when he needed one. It's, I know from talking to the director of National Federation of Independent Businesses in Maine, just for the state, he said there are a number of small businesses, if they could have an attorney, they didn't meet the asset requirement or some other requirement for indigent defense. But if they had an attorney, they would still be in business. I want to stress that we need the legal structure and we need to pay for it. Second thing is there are a number of grants. I get all these things about grants that are available for different projects. And you would have to, one of the people you'd have to get would be a grants person. But justice is really key right now. This whole COVID thing has opened up that social determinants of health are dealt with very well by people following the law and being sure there's equal justice. It extends into health. I've got this written part of it. My experience with the courts was as a pro se, and it's it's basically a very biased system if you don't have a lawyer. You need a lawyer. It's complex. And several other things. I was working on this late last night. We need the attorneys to step up and show how they're important for the economic development. It's the stability, and they're not doing that. This may be a good way of doing it. Yeah, I'll get that to you in writing. But I think this is an important thing to do. I'm very happy about what I'm hearing. I think that's all I got to say right now. Any questions from you? You've got to prevent people from coming into the indigent system. So anything you do to do that, you know, it's going to be helpful. But that's where you can get grant money too.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Okay. Are there questions or comments from the committee for Mr. Hines? Seeing none, thank you. Next up, Rob Kilgore. Good morning.
Good morning, senators, representatives, members of the commission. Thank you for your time today. I tend to be verbose and tangential, but I will try to keep that under control to keep this to a limited amount of time. Just to tell you a little bit, I am not an attorney. My name is Rob Kilgore, and I actually am staff for my wife, Taylor Kilgore, who is an attorney who does a lot of parent representation and guardian ad litem work. And so I'm the one who spends a lot of time in defender data. Just to give you a little bit about my background, I am actually uniquely qualified, I think, to offer my thoughts here because I do have a degree in public administration and I have an MBA in statistics. And I was formerly, and actually Senator Libby was a classmate of mine. So it's great to see you again, Chairman. The reason I'm now just working with my wife is because I was the director of sales for the fastest growing division of an e-commerce company. When I left the company after 12 years, I was responsible for a client portfolio of over $75 million. I got tired of being gone away from my family 1 week to 2 weeks every month, and so decided to make a change here. But looking at this, I'd like to talk to you about the intersection of efficiency and technology and funding. Everyone's saying, MCILS, we need to fully fund MCILS. They need more staff, more staff, more staff. And I agree, they probably do. They definitely need more funding, and they probably need more staff in the short term. But here's the thing about throwing bodies at an efficiency problem. Gas is always going to expand to fill a vacuum. You're never, ever going to hit a point where you can say, you know what, I think we have all the people we need. There's always going to be something more that's going to be expected of those people. So the solution to the efficiency problem here, as someone, again, who comes from the e-commerce world, I think you need to look at your technology. I think there's a lot of things, and if that means maybe even possibly going to another vendor, I don't know what your contracts look or how long you're locked in with these guys, but there's a lot of technology things that can be done to alleviate a lot of this stuff. I mean, we're looking here at I've got the report here in front of me. It says, 37% of the days in which a staff person was approving vouchers, they reviewed more than 100 vouchers, allowing less than 5 minutes to review each one. That is obviously not an effective use of staff time to say, I'm going to look at this thing for 5 minutes and just approve it because it hits this list of criteria. If you have an established set of criteria that is written down and that's codified somehow, one, you could share that with the attorneys and their staff, which the report says on page 7 is not happening. And two, you can automate a lot of that. Anecdotally, very quickly, when I was at that e-commerce firm, we had a lot of field sales representatives. And a decade ago, the process was for them to fill out an order form, fax it or email it to us. And we had a whole data entry department that would then hand key those orders into our system. Well, the expense of that staff, again, gas expands to fill a vacuum. You always need more. As we grew, all of our profit growth was getting eaten up because we had to keep throwing bodies at this data entry process. So what we did is we said, we're going to create this online order portal where our sales reps can just enter their own orders into our system. We can get rid of a bunch of these data entry people or repurpose them for other things we can use them for in the company. And it'll be great. And we can offer these reps that will be able to process their orders faster. And that part worked. However, there was an unintended consequence. Our customer records went bonkers in terms of data-wise, because we basically gave the keys to the kingdom to the inmates of the asylum. So anytime you say, we don't want to do the data entry, we want the people, we want a third party, this other person to do that data entry function. If you don't give them clear guidelines, you're right, you're going to have a data nightmare. We lived through it. We got through it. There's ways you can do it by automating controls in the system. Make it so that every voucher doesn't have to be looked at by a human being. Set those rules very well. Put that in the code of the system, and then your people that are reviewing vouchers are only reviewing the ones that get flagged, the ones that break those rules. That allows you to keep your staff costs under control while at the same time increasing your compliance. So it's a technology solution, guys, not a body solution. You probably need more people in the short term, but you got to realize more people is, generally speaking, just a Band-Aid, especially if you're talking about using a technology solution going forward. Don't just take the wasteful practices and then just automate those. Figure out how you can actually make a system that's going to work really, really well. That would be the number one piece of feedback I'd have for this committee, is that more funding, but think really hard about what you're spending that money on. Second, I'd like to address the pay rate issue. I agree with Jane Lang Gray and Corey McKenna that the money should be spent on fixing the problems, not necessarily on the rate. Because I'll tell you, my wife Taylor is a true believer. She does the work representing parents who the state is trying to take their children away from them. And she does that because she believes. She has a background in mental health. Before she went to law school, she was a mental health case manager. And she saw the struggles that her clients in that role were having working their way through the legal system. And she felt she needed to take her advocacy for them to the next level, which is why she became. The vast majority of attorneys that are working in the system, the vast majority of attorneys that I exchange emails with, setting up family team meetings and all that stuff, they are true believers. They do this work because they love it, because it's what needs to be done, because they are helping out the most vulnerable members of our society. And we shouldn't take the mission, we shouldn't forget the mission of MCILS in all of this. It's about protecting the people in our society that suffer from mental illness, addiction, and cyclical generational poverty. Those are the people that MCILS is making sure receive effective legal counsel. And that is very, very important. And just to tag a little bit of outrage onto the tail end of this, it says right here in the report, I don't have the page in front of me, I believe it was in Appendix B, that when the Sixth Amendment report came out, the media went bonkers and was like, oh, there's all these fraudulent attorneys running around and spending all the state's money on these frivolous things. And basically, no one came to the attorney's defense. Nobody. Everyone was silent. And I'm glad to hear now that Mr. Tardy speak about the effective counsel. You guys all need to do it louder. Okay, just as loud as the media shouted that all the attorneys were fraudulent, when this own OPEGA report says the Sixth Amendment Committee actually didn't have the best information to work with, we should have been trumpeting that just as loud. So you guys did a real disservice, I feel, to the attorneys working for MCILS who are the true believers, because let's not forget that right in the own report, while 97.7% of attorneys' annual fiscal totals were below 40 hours a week, instead you guys focused on the 2.3%, and that's what the media ran with, that, and including these, eight bad actors? And so I would say, let's make sure that, I believe that Tardy said that the more the public are under a microscope, the more this will be in the public interest. And I agree, it should be in the public interest. It's important, but we need to make sure the public's getting the right information and that the people who are doing this good work are not just getting thrown under the bus. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kilgore. Are there questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, off the record, Rob, nice to see you again outside of the night school graduate program experience. Okay. Let's see here. So the next person I have on my list is Kenneth Capron. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning, Senator. My name is Ken Capron. I'm from Portland. I'm a retired, or want to be retired, former CPA and Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer. I'm a systems analyst, and when I was in public accounting, I did a fair share of auditing, and I wanted to first start out by saying what an excellent report that OPEGA did, and compliments to them. They seem to have held no punches, and that's what people like to see, is an in-depth analysis of what could be going wrong. I think that the prior point about 8 attorneys causing a lot of stir in any system, there's a bell curve. There's offenders, there's overbillers on one end, and there's underbillers on the other end. And that just happens to be the way it is. What auditors look for is those offenders. And I think OPEGA did a good job of identifying where problems may lie, and they won't know until they get a further deep dive. In addition to that, I wanted to ask the committee, when you review reports like OPEGA's report today, do you ever consider looking at the state auditors' reports on the similar function as MCILS? I never hear the state auditors' reports come into play, and I'm curious if the state had identified these problems previously. I also want to state an opinion. I like the criminal Gideon that exists, but I wonder if at some point you folks couldn't also take a look at a civil Gideon, because I think there are a lot of civil cases that are improperly adjudicated just because of lack of funds. So at some point that I think needs to be put on the table. course, the issue in that case and this case is funding. And I'll get back to that, I hope. I wonder if in the OPEGA's work, if they did an evaluation as to whether a public defender's office would be a better alternative to an MCILS, where you have a full-time staff that works the public defense. I have no idea on that, but it just threw it out there because that is an alternative that could be considered. So we don't have to worry about other attorneys and how much they bill and how many hours they work. Maybe that's something we need to control. I always used to tell my kids, it's one thing to have rights, and the Constitution spells out a lot of rights that we have, and ourselves and defend our rights, then we have no rights at all. And that's where both criminal and civil Gideon come into play. Without some protection, the public has zero rights. If you can't defend your right to free speech, you have zero right to free speech, and so on. It just goes on down the list. We've got laws now that we can't afford to impose because of an indigent state. Lastly, I wanted to just talk about this concept, this idea of how to pay for this type of service, and maybe the whole judiciary system. I'm a strong believer that those who benefit from the system should pay for the system. And I'm surprised that the state has never considered some sort of a charge structure to practicing and active attorneys to pay for the entire judiciary system. That really shouldn't be on the burden of the taxpayers who may or may not benefit. But in reality, it's the attorneys who benefit most from having a court system and a judiciary system. And I think that's the place to put the money rather than increasing taxes broadly. I think the funding should come directly from attorneys across the board at a flat rate or a reasonable allocation thereof of the total cost of the judiciary to citizens of Maine. But I think that's the summary of what I'd like to say. It's definitely a necessary service. There is no question in my mind from reading the report that there is staff needed, and I would like to certainly see you folks put forward a recommendation. But again, you've got a budget wall that is going to make that impossible, if not difficult, if not impossible. So I'd recommend that somewhere in the GOC efforts that you start looking at a solution to the funding issue for the judiciary branch. And I know that's a far-reaching issue or concern, but I think without solving the funding issue, you're going to have the same problems with understaffing, not just in this department, but across the board. Most of your, like the Maine Human Rights Commission is understaffing a funding solution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Capron. Apologize for mispronouncing your name earlier this morning.
Happens all the time.
I can imagine. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony this morning. At this point, I did want to just check in to see if members of the commission or the commission staff will be able to stay on for the work session. I think the committee may have some additional questions or comments. If you are on and you're a member of the commission staff or the commission itself, if you, I think, raise your hand, just indicate if you're able to stay on for the work session. That would be very helpful. Looks like we've got several hands, so that is good. Representative Stover, did you have your hand up?
I thought you were asking for all people if you could stay.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just looking for the commission or the commission staff if they're able to stay on for the work session. Okay, great. So at this time, we've gone through all the folks who signed up to give testimony during this public comment period. Are there any folks who remain, who are wishing to testify, but who we've not called on? If so, please use the raise hand function located in the bottom of the Zoom window to let us know if you would like to testify. Again, it's for folks who did not sign up ahead of time, who are watching these proceedings. If you are interested in giving public comment at this time, please raise your hand. Looks like we've got one additional person, Robert Ruffner. Good morning.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Robert Ruffner. I am a resident of Yarmouth, Maine. I've been practicing law in Maine since 1999, where I started as a lateral hire from the St. Louis DA's office to the Cumberland County DA's office with Stephanie Anderson, and was a domestic violence prosecutor there. Since 2001, for 20 years now, I've been practicing criminal defense, primarily out of Portland, and my practice is almost entirely indigent defense. In December of 2007, I formed the Maine Indigent Defense Center as an advocacy mechanism to work to reform how indigent defense is provided in Maine, and have been continuing to do that as well. At the time, we did not have the commission. We were under the judiciary, and I have been a part or observing the process since that time. I can tell you that I think that the Sixth Amendment report and the OPEGA report provide an excellent opportunity to advance the ball forward, the cause of indigent defense, to increase the quality and value of what is being provided to the state of Maine. Essentially, after the commission was formed a decade ago, there hasn't been a lot of progress. It was an excellent first step, but it then stalled at that point for a variety of reasons, primarily because there was never enough staff to do anything besides keep the lights on and bail water and keep the ship afloat. And they worked incredibly long hours just to achieve that. I, over the years, have echoed almost all of the critiques and criticisms that were laid out in the Sixth Amendment report, as well as the OPEGA report, in my public comments at commission meetings. Senator Keim, I know, is aware of many of those. I would point out that everything about the current system is better, even though flawed, than it was under the judicial branch. Essentially, what we did, or what the state of Maine decided to do, was to give this process independence, take it away from the judicial branch where it shouldn't be, and structured it basically duplicating with slight improvements. There were standards, even though they were not particularly strong or stringent. There were no standards before to get on the list or to have certain types of cases. Now we at least have standards. It was all paper billing in the old days. So talking about not having answers to data, or knowing even who had what number of cases over a period of time, or billed in a certain number of hours in a week, month, or day, none of that existed under the judicial branch. So that the ability to criticize the commission for not having answers only existed because of those slight improvements that were made when the commission was formed. I would point out, though, that the reason I formed the Indigent Defense Center was to focus on the service being provided to the clients. That is why the state has to provide indigent legal services, is because either by statute or the Constitution, these individuals must be provided legal representation if the state wants to continue on with the various actions they're bringing. All of Maine benefits because of that. Without the service being provided, individuals who are a danger to themselves or others could not be hospitalized, could not be prosecuted and could not be punished. They would not be able to bring justice to anyone in the state of Maine without these services. So whether we are a direct benefit as a client of these services, whether we are a benefit because a family member or whether ourselves have been a victim of a crime and that individual was brought to justice, and because the state did provide legal counsel so that process it could go forward, and that we have confidence in the outcome of the judicial process because there is quality representation for the individuals. We have quality, we have a confidence that the right person was prosecuted, that the right sanction was imposed, and that the best tools for reducing recidivism and for healing have taken place. And that applies also in the arenas of child protective, involuntary commitment, and juvenile law as well. And I know that the OPEGA report focused on a narrow portion of the criticisms that were laid out in the Sixth Amendment report. But I have tried, I'm famously bad at analogies, but I do it anyway. The Sixth Amendment report, essentially, I see Senator Keim enjoyed that. The Sixth Amendment report was sort of like looking at a hospital who had a number of criticisms in a report, and they was unable to verify whether the doctors were performing the procedures that should be performed, whether the patients were getting the outcomes that should be achieved, whether patients may have died or lost limbs unnecessarily, and that there appeared to be an inability to verify that all of the Medicaid billing was done properly. And we are focusing almost entirely on, at this point, let's get that Medicaid billing system under control. It needs to be done. We should have answers to that question. The commission should have anticipated and been able to answer the questions and had explanations for them as a part of its duties when the Sixth Amendment report was being done, when they were investigating that. And it didn't, and that was a failure on their part. I and all the other attorneys still have many, many clients that are in the system, and with their you cannot computerize being able to tell whether an attorney is doing a good job, whether an attorney is missing the opportunity to grow and do a better job in the future through training, through mentoring. It takes, that is labor intensive. It involves qualified individuals who have the expertise to provide that evaluation and to give feedback. It's the sort of thing you see in a district attorney's office. When I was a district attorney's office in St. Louis, in my first trial, just a misdemeanor case, I had a homicide attorney second chairing me. She obviously was very experienced and had many better things to do than to sit next to me while I was doing my first jury trial in a misdemeanor. But without having an experienced person next to me, the office wouldn't have known, does Rob Ruffner know what the heck he's doing? Is he any good at doing trials? Is he missing things? Do we need to get him up to speed, or all the other misdemeanor attorneys up to speed on certain issues? And that takes a human being. You can't database that. In addition, the ability to do case file reviews to during or after a case is done doesn't exist without human beings. We don't have the ability to really get feedback from our clients. I think one change on the commission is that there really ought to be a client representative as a part of the commission. But we don't have the capacity to really get feedback from our clients to find out how we could do a better job in doing this. And while I understand that it is absolutely important that the money that we pay as taxes as taxpayers in Maine be spent responsibly, and there is accountability for that. I think that we are leaving open the deficiencies in the system in terms of what we should be doing for these individuals who are entitled to representation. And there needs to be a simultaneous effort. I'm not suggesting Frick stop talking about the billing practices and whether there's adequate oversight or accuracy. There needs to be a concurrent discussion and resources brought to bear on the issue of quality, on the issue of filling the gaps. We still have situations where people languish in jails due to gaps in the system for months because there was a slip up in the process. We have attorneys that are underutilized because we don't have a way to accurately reflect the fact that they could take on more than our arbitrary standards allow. And we don't have the ability to catch whether Rob Ruffner is still up to speed on everything he should be in terms of the various panels, because I'm on all of the adult criminal panels except for walk-in arraignments, and that was voluntary. But absent knowing Justin Anders for almost 2 decades as a practitioner, Justin would have no real information about me as an attorney. The reviewing the vouchers in terms of quality is a false tool. It's the only tool the commission has had historically, but it's not really a very effective tool for a variety of reasons, which I won't go into. So I would urge the committee to continue the work. I was heartened to hear the idea of the commission reporting back regularly. I think that will be very healthy for the discussion going forward, to keep focus and energy on the important work, the vital work that the commission does. Your constituents, all of you have constituents who are being represented right now by commission attorneys. They are mothers and fathers and sons and daughters also of your constituents, and making sure that that the best outcome is achieved for them. That doesn't mean an acquittal necessarily. It means that a chance to turn their lives around, because the attorney has the training and the skills and the resources to advocate for that sort of outcome, can make a huge impact, not only for your constituents, but the communities in which they live in. Someone who is able to turn their life around, whether it's mental health or substance abuse or poverty issues, and become a productive member of society, benefits us all, and is not someone we see again in my office or the equivalent of my office across the state. This is a vital service to the whole state that the commission is tasked with. And right now you've got Justin and Ellie, who are amazing public servants for the whole state, doing the accountability with the billing and an attempt at quality assurance. And I think I urge all of you in your other committees, in your other responsibilities, in discussions with other legislators and the governor's office, to recognize that we need to do both. We need to improve on both fronts, quality and accountability, immediately. And thank you very much. I'll happily take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Ruffner. Any questions or comments from the committee for Mr. Ruffner? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony this morning. Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify? If you are interested, please use the raise hand function. And I'll make a final call for any members of the public who are interested in testifying. Please indicate by using the raise hand function. Representative McDonald, I'm not seeing anyone else. Are you?
I do not see anybody else.
Okay, seeing none, I will close the public comment period and we will move into the committee work session on this item. So for new members of the committee, this is the opportunity for committee members to have a back and forth discussion about where we would like to see this project go in terms of next steps and what, if any, direction we give to the OPEGA staff for further inquiry. There are a variety of actions we can take, but at the very minimum, at the end of our discussion this morning, I will be asking for a motion to endorse the report. If it's helpful to the newer committee members, we have a sheet in our binder that sort of goes over the procedures and policies of our committee. We reviewed that at our orientation 2 weeks ago. Endorsement is a very typical action that we take. It doesn't necessarily mean that we agree with all of the political considerations around an investigation, but endorsement does mean we affirm that the OPEGA analysis was impartial, was accurate, was factual, and that's really what the endorsement vote is about. So I will be asking for a motion at the end of our discussion for that. I do know there are some members of the committee who are interested in perhaps having further conversation with either commission staff or commissioners, and they've agreed to remain on standby for that call. So with that, I will open it up to the committee. Senator Kime.
Thank you, Chair Libby. My question really would be for either the director or any of the commission members, because as we consider, there were 5 scope areas that we had originally created for OPEGA to take on. Number 1 and number 5 are the ones that were part of this report. And I'd like to hear from them what their opinion is on what's most helpful to them in moving forward, creating accountability as well, for public accountability and increasing the view that legislators, taxpayers, and all the people involved in indigent legal services have of the commission. And but then what helps moving forward? I mean, I have my ideas on what I think, but I really think this is just a great time to be able to hear from the commission or the director. I know that he's new, but looking at that. So, and if I don't know if folks need to have a reminder of the 5 scope areas. I can read them if that's helpful, or if people have them in front of them, I don't want to do that.
Senator Kime, perhaps you can remind the committee what page number in the MCILS report you're referencing for the scope.
So I think it was tab 3. And then there's a green paper and then there's a blue paper, and it's behind the blue paper. Gosh, it doesn't, I can't make that work.
It's okay. If we were all in the same room, we could probably flip to it together. But in tab 3, it's a letter from GOC. I don't have a date, but it's the prior GOC. And that includes the 5 parts of the scope. Senator Kime, are we referencing the same document?
Yes, and then is it referencing the scope there? Yes, I was looking at one that was highlighted. But yes, I think, let me look and make sure that that this and that are matching, because I was looking at a different document, but
I see that,
yes, they're the same.
Director Kruk has his hand raised. I think he's got an answer.
Oh, great.
Yeah, this is where Etta having the physical notebooks really pays dividends. Behind tab 3, tab 2 should have been the memo from the 129th GOC to the 130th. Behind tab 3 in your notebook is the detailed scope statement for MCILS. That includes all 5 questions, and then we split that out into the 2 pieces, as Senator Kime mentioned. 1 and 5 were in the first piece. Would you like me to just briefly summarize the remaining 3 questions? Or you're all set?
Senator Kime, would you like that summary?
I have it in front of me, but in case the commission members do not, I think that would be helpful.
Please go ahead, Matt.
Okay. Question 4 was really related to the sufficiency of MCILS's response to identified concerns and any recommendations that would have come from reports, not just ours, that were related to financial oversight. And the remaining 2 questions, numbers 2 and 3, were related to indigency and partial indigency determinations. And a lot of that lands with the judicial branch. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you, Matt. So Senator Kime, I believe you've posed your question, and it looks like we've got Mr. Andrus and Mr. Carey who have their hands up. Actually, it looks like we have Mr. Commissioner Carey. Go ahead.
Thank you, Senator. So I reviewed these 5 pieces early in preparation for the hearing. I don't think any of these are moot or past the point. I think they're all important questions. I would suggest, however, that help with resources to do audits back to the past is critical. And I look to the state's role here as set forth by statute as, in this sentence, the commission shall work to ensure the delivery of indigent legal services by qualified and competent counsel. As I referenced earlier, the commission hasn't yet set forth standards for the evaluation of assigned counsel. And I would strongly recommend to the legislature that existing staff need to be focused on ensuring what they're doing, ensuring that funds are used properly. That's not to say it's more important. It's to say we haven't yet met the basic function of statute and the Sixth Amendment Center. And if looking at the past gets the legislature and the public to trust that we are using state resources properly so we can focus on ensuring quality and indigent legal services, we need to do that.
Thank you, Commissioner Carey. And I'm sorry, Mr. Andrus, I would have called on you. I saw your screen go away for a moment, so please go ahead.
I was trying to cede the first position to Mr. Carey and accomplish that. So, Senator Kime, I would answer your question, how can OPEGA help with this process and what do we need, in 2 steps. The first is keep the light on us and challenge what we're doing. I think that's going to do 2 things, and I think they're both vitally important, perhaps equally important. The first is it's going to demonstrate the existing reality that far and away the majority of our attorneys are providing excellent representation, honestly, fairly, and efficiently. And we need to demonstrate that, not by me proclaiming it from my podiums, but by opening our books to you, to anyone else who's appropriate to look, and demonstrating that reality, because that is the reality. The other thing is, it's very difficult for us to identify, as we do the work of the day, all of the places where there need to be system level efficiency and oversight changes. It's easy to say this step in the day could be done differently and alleviate the immediate irritation of doing something. But it's difficult to do that on a sort of more global view without somebody having, a look in at us. And it's good to have a trainer. I'm recovering from having torn my Achilles, and I don't want to disappoint my physical therapist. And so I work out better than I might if I didn't have somebody who was going to keep me accountable. And so that's a really useful task, master kind of role over us, and I invite it for all of those reasons. In terms of actual practical on-ground application, this may be a place where one of my issues is I don't know all of the things that you can do, but to the extent, and I recognized, I think it was Mr. Chair, you were talking about the need to recognize that there are other things happening, and we are not the only child of OPEGA. But to the extent that there is time or resources to participate directly in analyzing what's there, certainly we invite that. If there are other resources, I don't know about them. And so I don't mean to be shunning them. Please interpret that as an ask for anything anyone can do to help us down that road. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Andrus. Are there other comments or questions from committee members? Representative Millet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. More in the nature of comments, I just say I am pleased with the question you posed to Chair Tardy for quarterly report backs to the committee to keep us aware of progress being made both under the interim director and going forward. I particularly would like to see the GOC updated regularly on the status of the staffing request, the pilot budget request, the biennial funding level, and the carry forward amount that former Representative Carey mentioned. And I think we can do that. We have representation on the committee from both appropriations and judiciary. As I think has been referenced today, the program has been flat funded in the current biennium, 17.7 million in the year just concluded, or last year, and 17.6 going forward. We have before us in appropriations with a recommendation from the judiciary, the ability to free up some carry forward money that was in a reserve account, approaching $3 million. We, in our first pass yesterday, didn't really act upon it because it was a committee, was a piece of language, and we concentrated more on the so-called low-hanging fruit. But that does appear to be a reserve amount of money that could be used balance of this year and going forward. And I would like to see if we could get from the staff, perhaps from Justin, an estimate of the carry forward balance that you might see from fiscal 21. I also would like to see or hear from the commission and or the administration on why the additional staff weren't recommended in the biennial budget and why the pilot project for Kennebec County was also similarly rejected. The next issue which got my attention, I think it came from Attorney Ruffner, is some focus going forward on quality. Just reading the statutory charge, efficiency is something that was referred to by, I think, Rob Kilgore in the intersection of funding and technology as a focus of how to get to a more efficient measure of representation. But the high quality piece intrigues me. And finally, I thought there was some value in the comment about going forward coordination between the work of the state auditor and the work of the commission. And I question the resource availability to do much more rear view mirror auditing, but I did like the idea of coordinating going forward audit work. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Millet. To your last point, I also am questioning that piece, and I understand from Commissioner Carey that a discussion with the state auditor has occurred and that the resources at this time, at least at the time that the request was made, the audit resources of that office may not be available for the look back. But I'm happy to sort of explore that further, because I do know that OPEGA's resources for the look back audit are limited as well, mostly due to the quality of the data that's available. So I think with that, I'm going to first call on Commissioner Cummins.
I did not want to be misinterpreted in terms of my focus on quality as distinguished from efficiency. I certainly agree, having chaired a commission in Illinois for 8 years that dealt with the discipline of judicial officers, how important it is to account to the legislature, to account to the public for the expenditure of funds. I know that's critical and fundamentally important. What I focus on and took an oath to implement is the insurance that indigents charged with a criminal offense are adequately and competently represented. And because I have a lot of experience in the courtroom representing indigents, both in state and federal court, over many years, I could just tell you, there's no way to measure the quality of performance on a computer or by reports of time, time records, timekeeping. None of that tells the story and cannot tell the story. Anybody who's experienced in the justice system knows that. I think our interim executive director has his hands on this full time with competence, and I endorse entirely what he has said about, in general, the performance of our rostered attorneys is terrific. It meets the qualification standards, but it's not true across the board. And if there's a book written in 1920 by a Yale professor. The title of the book is Convicting the Innocent. Reading that book tells you that unless an individual charged with crime is adequately and competently represented, then we failed in our constitutional duty. And I know that responsibility is not at the doorstep of you folks. But your endorsement of the criticality of that issue, I know Senator Keim has tuned in on this. It's so manifest, and it has to be addressed now. We're 2 years into the Sixth Amendment report having been issued to the Judicial Council, and as well as MCILS has attempted to comply with the observations there, we're still wanting, and we're not going to be able to do the job that we must do, which we're mandated to do, without the support of your legislative efforts and the efforts of the judiciary and executive branches in support of that. The question was raised about the Kennebec project. personally speaking, I think that is so important because it will demonstrate to the stakeholders and to the public that there is a reform system that can be implemented that will satisfy in so many respects the obligations to meet the constitutional requirements here in Maine. So just to summarize, we've got to keep our eye on the ball of the performance of lawyers. And I don't discount whatsoever the need for efficiency in implementing the expenditures that MCILS makes, both in compensating lawyers and otherwise. We are short of staff. We don't have enough funds. And we can't assure, despite the efforts of a lot of wonderful lawyers, we can't assure that we're meeting the obligation that we face as commissioners, that is to ensure that high quality performance is rendered in every case that wherein an indigent is charged or a dispute over the best interest of a child is at stake. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Cummins. I do want to take this opportunity to remind all of the folks participating in this meeting that, and this is my fault for not being clearer in the beginning, but the work session portion of our meeting is really the opportunity for the committee members to have the back and forth. We've invited commission staff and commissioners to help us answer questions as we go through this process as a committee. We just asked for all non-committee members to please keep your remarks to questions posed by committee members or along those discussion points. So appreciate folks helping us with that as we navigate the new world of electronic meetings. Mr. Director Andrus, Representative Millett, I think, had posed a couple of good suggestions, and I believe he was formulating some requests for future work, and I wonder if you'd be able to be responsive to some of those comments. Director Andrus.
Well, thank you. I will start with his question about quality, and I will not revisit Commissioner Cummings' comment, except to say that he said to some extent quality is not on the doorstep of this group, and I would refer you back to for MRSA 1801 and look at the actual statutory charge, which is unequivocal about providing defenses, and then qualifies that should be done in a way that's efficient. In other words, the Sixth Amendment quality problem is the charge of all of us, and the financial stuff is secondary to that. My immediate focus on it has been for the purpose of establishing the resources to meet the second need. And as to Representative Millett's question, we're going to need to have a lot of more broadly defined roles in the organization and some metrics, and have people actually out and looking at what people are doing. I have begun that process. We are a long way from being able to do it, and it's going to bring up staffing problems again when we get to doing that. You asked how much money might be available. There's $2.6 million, I believe, in the fund that we're asking through the supplemental budget be made available to us. I want to make sure that everybody is aware that we are seeing a false cash flow at the moment. The absence of trials has resulted in a significant reduction in the amount of attorney time being spent. The piper is going to come on that issue. And trials are going to get stacked together at some point in the future when the current pandemic situation is under control. And we're going to see a ramp that's at least equal to ramp up, that's at least equal to the ramp down that we've been experiencing. So the thing to remember is, to the extent it looks like we may have surplus funds, we're going to have surplus expenses in the foreseeable future when it comes to that. And then there was a question about why, what happened to the Kennebec pilot program and to the requests in the biennial budget. And I hear my answer before I say it. I don't mean it to be flip. It's sincere. We asked for it. We want it. I'm doing everything in my power, and Ellie and the rest of the crew here doing everything in their power to demonstrate to you, to the legislature, to the executive that we're limiting or eliminating the waste, getting control over whether or not there's fraud, making sure there isn't some going forward, and that all of that is in an effort to demonstrate to all of you that the organization is worthy of the funding to allow us to achieve our Sixth Amendment mandate. I'll stop there since I want to be sensitive to what the chair just advised me, but that's the answer. That's the response to your question.
Thank you, Director Andrus. I see that Representative Arata has her hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a quick question about vacancies. The report mentions that there are a lot of vacancies in the indigent legal services. I know the budget calls for 11.5 positions, and I was wondering if the vacancy level has had an impact on your ability to get the work done, and if filling those vacancies might suffice rather than adding the 2 more positions that have been requested.
Director Andrus, you're on mute.
Thank you, Representative. Those vacancies, as you call them, are vacancies in our needs, but they're not vacancies in our budget. And so when we asked for those positions, we were asking to add staff. When I've asked to add 2 in the supplemental budget that moved through judiciary last week, those were 2 of the set you see in that budget. So we don't have 11 vacancies or 10 vacancies that we could go fill. I would be delighted to have the problem of finding the right people to fill all of those needs.
So you have currently 11.5 positions with bodies filling those seats?
No, Representative. I currently have 4 office staff and 8 financial screeners. I'm one of those staff. Ellie's one of those staff. We have a financial technician and we have an admin. We have those 4. We have 8 people in the field doing the financial screening. They're not available to us here in the office to fulfill the operational tasks at this level. All of those other positions that were in that budget were requests for additional staff that are necessary to properly run the organization, as identified by the 6AC report. It's actually undercutting a little bit what the 6AC report recommended, but those people don't exist. There's me, there's Ellie, who's on the call with us, there's Lynn, and there's Lori, and that's it. And there are 600, give or take, lawyers, 28,000, give or take, clients. At the end of the day, there's 2 of us making decisions over providing oversight for those people, and 2 more people helping to implement the tasks associated with that oversight in various ways. I don't want to belabor that.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. I wasn't sure where those other 8 people were.
Commissioner Tardy, do you have your hand up?
I think Mr. Andrus resolved the question.
Thank you. Senator Khan.
Yeah, I have a few questions, but one was, I believe Representative Millett brought up several issues, and I just, they were good, but they were numerous, so I lost track a little bit. So I just wanted to check and see if he got them all answered. And one that he asked about, I do have questions around where the pilot project would be, Kennebec versus Cumberland, but I think that is better, a discussion better for the Judiciary Committee. So I would just go back to Representative Millett's other questions if they all were answered, and then I'll ask some of my own.
Representative Millett.
I think they have been answered, Mr. Chair and Senator Keim, in one way or another. I want to first say that when I focused on the words quality and efficiency, I was reflecting on the comments we'd heard this morning, not in any way suggesting that against the checklist that Justin and staff are working on now, that those ought to rise to additional priorities. But I do think that they are assumed to be part of their ongoing charge anyway. I think the budgetary and staffing questions have been answered. The comments that Justin made about the pandemic having reduced the level of representation in current fiscal year and having that come back in the upcoming year, I think makes logical sense. However, I do think that we, both at the Judiciary Committee level and appropriations, need to have a sense of the magnitude of that carry forward, make sure it is not swept and allowed to continue, and that we have further responses outside of MCILS and from the administration on the reasons or the rationale, if other than fiscal, for not including the pilot project and or addressing the staffing requests that have been made to us. And Mr. Chair, you've answered the audit coordination question going forward and backward, so I think that's been an answer to my satisfaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Millet. Senator Keim.
Thank you. So going back to the question of accountability and obviously going forward, the systems are going to be in place to create accountability. And we've chatted about whether or not we could task OPEGA with a deeper dive into what went on in the past. One of my concerns is that we rebuild the house with the same players, so to speak. And I understand there's a lot of difficulties with the data. And as I've talked to different commissioners and different folks involved with this, I think there is what I sensed was a pretty big concern that we try to do something further with looking back. And obviously this couldn't be staff from what we're hearing. This can't be staff at MCILS because it's a temporary issue. So it isn't a permanent staff problem to have a sort of a deeper dive audit. That's a one-off to, I think, put MCILS in a better place moving forward with creating transparency and accountability for what's been going on and has, made a lot of headlines and raised a lot of eyebrows. So I wonder if how the commission, how the director feels, but also maybe Matt, if you would speak to that as well. I know that you are the one that did a lot of the legwork in all of this and probably has some comments for us on the validity of OPEGA doing a deeper dive, if that's an appropriate question, Chair Libby.
Matt, would you like to respond to Senator Keim's question?
Yep, not a problem. So I guess I'll kind of take it from the top. Here's what's going on with the voucher data. And I guess I should first explain something about vouchers. The voucher is essentially the attorney's invoice, and each line item on that invoice are work events. And that's a selected drop-down field that indicates what was done, like a phone call with a client. And then the attorney enters the duration of the event. The voucher system was really just used for two purposes: for attorneys to bill hours worked on a case, and for MCILS to ensure that billed hours were reasonable and appropriate for the type of task and class of crime. With that narrow focus driving how hours are reported and reviewed, the data entered by the attorneys didn't necessarily need to be granular. I believe that's what Director Andrus called it earlier, with discrete entries for each work event, day, and attorney in order to be approved and paid. So as a result, we find ourselves left with a data set that has entries capturing potentially the hours of multiple attorneys under one attorney, batching multiple small work events over the entire course of the case into one large single event entry, and capturing work hours on the wrong date. And I should say this is a pretty big data set. I can't remember exactly how many attorneys, I'd say 500 or 600, billing 4.5 million work events on 282,000 vouchers. And any single voucher can span a very long period of time, spanning the duration of a case. When we first got the data, we had pretty big plans for identifying outliers or unreasonable numbers for specific tasks and attorneys. And it was, I believe Commissioner Carey mentioned maybe doing this in the future, or Director Andrus, and using that as a way to flag maybe behaviors in attorneys that may warrant some intervention. Why is Attorney X taking, always using, always providing this sort of work event for this case, and why is it taking them so much longer than others? We weren't able to do all of that because of the data. As you can see in the report, we did look at high outlying values for 8 particular event types. There's more than 8, I don't remember the exact number. But within those 8 event types, there were 110,000 outlying values over the 10-year period, with some pretty wild entries in there, like 30 hours to prepare an email or a 20-hour phone call with a client. And obviously we picked up on those immediately. When we took a closer look at those entries, we found that over 80% of them were either flagged by MCILS and then later corrected by an attorney. They either had an event note from the attorney or a voucher note from the attorney, or the voucher total was overridden by the director or deputy director. And there's a couple of important aspects of these things. The notes are narrative, and we have no real good way to process them in bulk and also identify which entries reference or explain the hours billed. And also from our review of the high daily hours tracking spreadsheet, hours may be batched by attorneys without a note in Defender data, and there's no good way for us to detect that. And when the voucher total was overridden, only the voucher total was corrected. The particular line item entry that caused the issue, like 12 hours being entered instead of 1.2 hours, that wasn't corrected and it remains in the data. So we have some poor quality data that we were able to use to assess MCILS's monitoring efforts and controls. And that's really the focus of the issues in the report, rather than specific instances of potential overbilling. When we go beyond that and try to use the data to identify potential overbilling, we start to run into issues. To do a deeper dive, we need to identify specific attorneys and time periods, because there's no way we could review all the attorneys or even review an attorney's entire year of billing. But to do that, we'd be leveraging all our future work and resources against this data that has all those issues. So I hope that description of the data helps. There's a few other complicating factors in there. We still would have to figure out, we'd have to work with our AAG to figure out what we'd be able to obtain from attorneys, if we could obtain or review their time records related to non-MCILS cases. And then we have to figure out what we'd be able to provide to you. And then assuming we could identify specific attorneys and timeframes from our data, and assuming we had the authority to get all the information we needed, We still don't know whether the selected attorneys will have those records or if it's going to be in a format we could use. I know that's sort of a lot to digest, and obviously if it's the will of the committee, we'll be glad to try something. If it is really something you want to do, we could put a couple of people on this for a month to work the data and see how much of the bad data we can sift out or account for and figure out what a sample might look like. And then we would also work with the AAG to figure out what we can obtain, report on, and figure out what exists for records, and then come back to you and outline sort of where we're at and what we could do. And then you could make a decision on what you'd like us to do. I just don't want to commit to something we may not be able to do based on what we have. I just wanted to make sure that I'm clear on that. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Matt. That is helpful. Director Andrus, did you have additional information on this point?
I do. I also have an answer to Representative Millett's question during the time that Senator Kine was asking him if something was outstanding. I don't know how much information this group wants today, but one of the focuses of my work to date has been eliminating the sources of the data issues that Matt was just talking about. And so if you want that detail, I'm happy to share it. I also don't want to cause your eyes to glaze over with trivia. So I'll ask that question. And then also for Representative Millett, I can't predict what that flood looks like because I don't have all the data, but I can give you one data point, which is illustrative. In about September of 2019, there were 2,600 open outstanding cases on the Unified Criminal Docket for trial in Portland. A year later, there were 4,400. So they're backing up at that point at a rate that it caused a doubling in 9 months or so, less than 9 months, in terms of what the court's normal workflow was, because the courts didn't shut down, of course, in January, it was more like March. And so anecdotally, what I'm hearing is that some courts are thinking maybe some jury trials in the April timeframe, but I have no idea whether that's realistic. So when that flood comes, we're going to be looking at something like a doubling of the expected case volume per court for 6 or 8 months of backlog. And so we're well into the second, I shouldn't say the second doubling, we're into the second instance of a doubling of the underlying. I don't know how to express that. So it is a very, very significant problem that's coming, both in terms of the load that will be on courts and our attorneys and the prosecutors, and also the cost that will be associated with satisfying that.
Thank you. Next in the queue is Senator Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Matt, when you were talking about both what you have done and going forward in terms of looking at the billing issues, I noticed you only talked about overbilling and alleged overbilling irregularities. Am I to take away from that that you have not looked at, and it doesn't even sound like you would plan on looking at underbilling? Because as we heard today and has been raised before, that's kind of where the interplay perhaps of quality comes in. I mean, an extreme example would be if an attorney submitted a voucher for a murder trial for 2 hours. That should be a red flag, you know, that something is not right there. So again, my question is, have you only looked at are you only planning to look at overbilling, or would you look at underbilling as well? Thank you.
Our focus was the outliers that were high. So we would not have looked at underbilling. We were focused on the idea of potential overbilling because this was born from a lot of the 6AC work. And when you just said something, it reminded me, I really should be referring to this as potential overbilling, because at this point, we only have some outlying values that may look like overbilling, but they could actually be the result of how the hours were recorded. But in reality, all the billed hours actually reflect hours spent working on cases.
Director Andrus?
Thank you. Senator Bailey, on this point, the very first thing I did before I was director at a financial subcommittee meeting that I attended coming up to speed was change our nomenclature and concept of high billing triggers to risk triggers. Because from my perspective, in meeting the Sixth Amendment charge, low billing events, or even if they're not low, absent billing events, are a big problem. For example, the absence of motions to suppress in certain cases should be alarming. It is an investigation that I'm going to have to do because I have a freedom of access request from the ACLU specifically asking that question, among others. And so I'm going to have to look at what information exists and what I'm not going to produce reports for them in that context, but that data is about to come out and be used for that purpose beyond what we want. Now, there are going to be some confidentiality statute constraints on what's produced, and we still need to finish that work. So I don't want to be suggesting we're waiving that part of that process by talking about its existence here, but that work's about to be done.
Thank you. Are there further questions or comments from the committee? Senator Khan.
Changing focus a little bit. Thank you for Matt for that explanation, and that was very helpful. The deep dive. I know it's in the weeds, but we need to hear it. Around the idea of determining indigency, I think we've heard that, you know, from the 6AC report that there's a considerable lack of consistency. And as people who are going through the system, that also speaks to fairness. So I have concern that we look at the standards, that we understand how they're being applied, if there are standards being applied equally and in all areas. And I know further that we're looking to see where this would be housed, right? Because it maybe should not be housed at MCILS, but somewhere we still need to have a look at how we're determining indigency and the fairness around that issue. So I'm not sure who's best to speak to that, but those are some other issues that we had for our scope coming up, and I think important.
Director Andrus.
Senator, I appreciate the question. I'm not ready to answer it because I haven't had the opportunity to get my head fully around that part of the operation. I told you at the beginning I would acknowledge where my 24 days haven't yet been enough. So there's one. But we do very much need to figure out whether our standards are what they should be and make sure that they're being applied consistently. I also, my charge under 1801 is the representation of the defendants or civil litigants in those instances first. And it leads to a number of other places. We're having the internal discussion over the last day on the issue of addressing fines and restitution on behalf of courts and whether we should have any part in that from that perspective. So my view is, without knowing all of the other things that it would implicate, we should be moving that function outside so that we're not having a conflict between our organization and the people we're intended to represent. But until then, we need to tidy it up. Hopefully, in a couple of weeks, I can answer that more fully.
Thank you. And further questions or comments, Senator Khan?
Just looking to see if another person on the commission might have a comment around that. It was something pretty strongly highlighted in the 6AC report.
I guess I can just share my response, Senator, Mr. Chair.
Please go ahead.
So I agree with the concern with that. I also saw the issue raised in the Sixth Amendment Center report, and it's concerning. It's from my perspective, I've been focusing on the financial processes of the organization, and I also as one person on the commission, and frankly in this case more as a citizen than anything else, I do agree with the Sixth Amendment Center that it should be a judiciary branch function, but agree with the director that we administer it and need to do it properly.
Further questions or comments from the committee? So I think at this point, I would like to talk through next steps that we may want to decide on. And the first one that I'd like to put on the floor is we've had some discussion about asking commissioners and staff from MCILS to return to this committee on a quarterly basis. I'd like to suggest we at least see if we can get some agreement there on frequency and scope. For frequency, I'd say quarterly for the remainder of the 130th legislature. And in terms of scope, I think we're interested in their finances and their budget, their audit progress, quality control, and determinations of indigency. Those were four sort of areas that I think I'm interested in, and I've heard other committee members are interested in. Are there other subjects that committee members would like to see as part of a report back, or is there general comment on that on the issue of report backs in general? Looking to the committee first. Representative Stover.
Thank you. For the next quarterly, I want to take into consideration, as Senator Millett suggested, that if we're to assume that there is a potential of a $3 million carryover, just where would services be if the backlog of cases actually come into the court? What is that carryover going to mean within the existing budget if the number of cases that have been backlogged is excessive, so excessive that it's going to eat up the existing resources and any potential carryover? I'm just trying to understand better how that's going to reflect on the budget. If the courts have been intermittently open and there's been a number of things that haven't been able to go forward, what does that mean on the budget for when that does actually, sort of when the floodgates open, what's going to happen, and does that 3 million, how's that going to play into it? Or are we really looking at a deficit when the courts reopen and all of the cases come forward? So maybe just for the next quarterly discussion, just to check in on the budget and to see where things are, both with the courts and with the dollars that we're putting forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further comments or suggestions, questions on quarterly reporting as a proposal? Senator Kime.
I would just agree. I think it's a good idea for the rest of this session.
I think I need to look to the more senior members of the committee for this topic. I believe in the past we've operated sort of by consensus here, but haven't necessarily taken a formal vote. Is that the recollection of other senior members on the question of asking an agency to do a report back? If there's a question, we can certainly have a motion and a vote. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Senator. I am comfortable with the way you outlined the contents of the motion and the communication. And so I think that's an appropriate motion to be made. And if it would get this issue before us, I'd be happy to endorse your motion as outlined earlier.
Thank you. I understand, Representative Millett, you've made a motion, and I'm looking for a second. Representative O'Neill has seconded. The motion is asking MCLS to present to us on a quarterly basis for the remainder of the 130th, reporting on, at the very least, finances and budget, audit, quality control, determinations of indigency, and other matters as appropriate. Any questions on the motion? Discussion? Are members ready for the vote? I'll ask Matt to call the roll.
Senator Libby.
Yes.
Senator Libby, yes. Senator Bailey.
Yes.
Senator Bailey, yes. Senator Vitelli.
Yes.
Senator Vitelli, yes. Senator Kime.
Yes.
Senator Kime, yes. Senator Timberlake.
Yes.
Senator Timberlake, yes. Senator Bennett, absent. Representative McDonald.
Yay.
Representative McDonald, yay. Representative O'Neill.
Yes.
Representative O'Neill, yes. Representative Stover.
Yes.
Representative Stover, yes. Representative Dillingham.
Yes.
Representative Dillingham, yes. Representative Millett.
Yes.
Representative Millett, yes. Representative Arata.
Yes.
Representative Arata, yes.
Motion carries. As we're still in work session, a couple of other items that came to mind. In past reports, there have been times where OPEGA has assisted this committee in developing draft legislation to be submitted to one of the joint standing committees to consider. The last GOC did not direct OPEGA to develop draft legislation. I understand there's a number of proposals sitting in the Judiciary Committee. So I think, and I'd look to other members to see if you would agree, but at this time, it appears that we don't necessarily need to ask OPEGA to assist us on that front, and that there is, I think, adequate attention being paid by Judiciary Committee members and others, so that perhaps that's not something we'd want to consider at this time. And I guess I'd look to Senator Kime and others to make sure I characterize that fairly.
Yes, I think that Judiciary is following up on MCLS very well, and that they could put out legislation if needed.
I think other folks in the committee would probably say that's a fair statement. So, okay. So we will not take action on that front. I do want to bring us back to the conversation about OPEGA staff being engaged in audit work. I think we have two tracks here. There's past audit work and future audit work. I think to revisit this conversation. I am concerned with the quality of the data that OPEGA has reviewed to date, and that sort of directing them to engage in a scope of work at this stage, at least in my opinion. We may not be ready for that vote at this point. However, I know that Matt has offered to have a couple of his folks work with Assistant Attorney General and the commission staff to at least come back to us with their assessment of how a look back audit may work. So I'd be open to a conversation like that. However, I do also want to put on the table, I think I've referenced the Office of State Auditor a couple of times throughout our discussion on the subject. And I think it's probably to the point where perhaps the co-chairs ask the auditor for a meeting to discuss this matter, because I know that GOC wants to be protective of our OPEGA staff resources. I imagine the state auditor wants to be protective of the Department of Audit staff resources, but clearly if folks are interested in doing the look back and really digging down, it's going to take some significant resources. And I just want to make sure we're considering that before we task our staff with going down that rabbit hole. Are there comments or questions from the committee on that point? I'm not seeing anyone. So I think at this point, unless there's a direction from the committee, we are not asking staff to spend time on this look back at this point. Is that fair to say? Senator Khan?
So I guess I understood you to say that they were going to look at what that would entail and come back to us with some idea of that, or are we not doing that?
I think I'd like the committee to give the staff some direction, and I think the options before us are to do nothing, to do a preliminary, do some preliminary work, and then a third option would be to engage in a full look back audit with the data we have available. And I'm not advocating for the third option, but I do want the committee to weigh in on option 1 or 2. I think those are the most practical options at this point. Matt, did I mischaracterize anything there, or is there any clarifying information you'd like to share?
No, I had thought perhaps we could come back in maybe a month and work this a little bit in an incremental stages to sort of see, okay, what is possible from that, or where we would end up, and then we could tell you. I just don't want to mislead you that we can do this or get tasked with something we can't do, or tell you it's impossible when there is a way to do it. But we're just not at that point yet to be able to say that. The other thing I wanted to point out was moving forward, how it's been described so far almost sounds as though it's a consulting relationship, and that's typically not a role we would have with an agency we've reviewed. Normally as an auditor, you always want to make sure you are not assuming management's responsibility. That said, I am very glad to sit down and talk to anyone from MCILS and better explain what we observed, what we would expect, what we were looking for. But beyond that is not something we would typically do. I mean, being part of a subcommittee or being an active participant in them figuring that out, how they want to structure this.
Senator Timberlake.
I would think that we would want to have at least Matt do some of that look back and report back to us and give us some guidance of what they can do and what they can't do and what they think they could give us for information, because I don't think a little more information would hurt us at all. And I'd like to see a little more.
Other members of the committee? Senator Khan.
So, and also would part of that be a communication with the state auditor to see what role they could possibly play in this, so that we're considering all options at once?
Yeah, I think I'll speak for myself that if that's the direction the committee would like to go, I'd be happy to work with the staff to have that conversation with the Office of State Auditor. Senator Khan.
Thank you. Yeah, just to clarify, what I'm hoping is that staff comes back to us with it sort of framed as a value proposition, whether or not it's worth the time and what they really think we're going to be able to gain from that. And I had one other question too, and that was, is the OPEGA staff currently working on the other three the other three issues that we had brought up, or was that completely set aside while they focused on 1 and 5? Is 2, 3, and 4, are they not they're not focused or doing any work on that at all?
I'm glad you mentioned that. Right now, just because of the current resource allocation of the office and me doing this role, we are actively working questions 2 and 3, the ones related to indigency and partial indigency, and those determinations. Question 4, however, that was related to that sufficiency of their response to things that happened in the past. A lot has changed since we brought you that scope question. At that time, there were only 3 commission members with 2 vacancies. None of those members are on the current commission, and the commission's been expanded to 9 members. The former executive director, the only one MCILS had ever had, recently resigned. There's an interim director, we've heard from him, and there's a search underway. And then for whatever reasons, we hadn't seen a lot of movement on prior recommendations, whether that be from the report from the legislature's working group, and I can't remember exactly when that was, 2017 maybe, the 6AC report. But recently, I mean, even today, we're hearing about these actions being taken, not only in response to those reports, but our own. Because those conditions have changed so much, as well as maybe the potential value to that answer, we're left wondering whether it makes sense for us to proceed with this question. And the reason I bring that up is if we are doing this preliminary work building towards this value proposition that you'd mentioned to figure out what's doable, we could potentially be doing that instead of question 4.
Comments or questions on that item? Senator Khan.
I promise I won't talk as much next time. I kind of agree. I think we could vote to remove the question 4. It does seem that so many changes have taken place, and serving on judiciary as well, I've been watching the changes take place, and I definitely agree that that is not really a need anymore, because so much has changed, and the response is entirely different than it was back when when the scope was created.
I'm sorry if this was already stated and I missed it, but Matt, would it be helpful, or is it not necessary to take a vote on eliminating number 4 from the scope?
This one I'd actually take a vote on where it was voted and approved by the GOC as a scope question.
So it would be helpful to have us take a vote on that. Okay. Are there, I think I'll ask for a motion here on that suggestion so that we can have discussion if folks are open to that. Senator Kime, do you have a motion?
Yes, I make a motion that we remove scope question 4.
And do we have a second? Representative O'Neill, seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Matt, would you call the roll?
Senator Libby.
Yes.
Senator Libby, yes. Senator Bailey.
Yes.
Senator Bailey, yes. Senator Vitelli.
Yes.
Yeah. Senator Vitelli, yes. Senator Kime.
Yes.
Senator Kime, yes. Senator Timberlake.
Yes.
Senator Timberlake, yes. Senator Bennett, absent. Representative McDonald.
Yay.
Representative McDonald, yay. Representative O'Neill.
Yes.
Representative O'Neill, yes. Representative Stover.
Yes.
Representative Stover, yes. Representative Dillingham.
Yes.
Representative Dillingham, yes. Representative Millet.
Yes.
Representative Millet, yes. Representative Arata.
Yes.
Representative Arata, yes.
The vote is unanimous. Okay. I think at this point, I would like to ask the committee if now is a good time for a motion on endorsing the OPEGA MCILS report. And again, endorsement for our committee and for our policies and statute. You know, if you're voting in favor of endorsement, that means as committee member, you find the results credible, objective, complete with regard to the assigned scope of review. So if now is a good time, I would entertain a motion to endorse the report. Senator Kime. Senator Kime has.
Yes, I make a motion to endorse the report.
Thank you. And the second, Representative O'Neill seconded that motion. Is there any discussion on the motion to endorse the MCILS report? Seeing none, Matt, will you call the roll?
Senator Libby.
Yes.
Senator Libby, yes. Senator Bailey.
Yes.
Senator Bailey, yes. Senator Vitelli.
Yes.
Senator Vitelli, yes. Senator Kime.
Yes.
Senator Kime, yes. Senator Timberlake.
Yes.
Senator Timberlake, yes. Senator Bennett, absent. Representative McDonald.
Yay.
Representative McDonald, yay. Representative O'Neill.
Yes.
Representative O'Neill, yes. Representative Stover.
Yes.
Representative Stover, yes. Representative Dillingham.
Yes.
Representative Dillingham, yes. Representative Millet.
Yes.
Representative Millet, yes. Representative Arata.
Yes.
Representative Arata, yes.
Motion carries. Are there any other matters related to MCILS that committee members would like to discuss during this work session? Seeing none, I will close the work session. And on behalf of the committee, I'd like to express my thanks to Director Andrus, to Deputy Director Misiag, to all of the members of the commission who are with us this morning. We appreciate your efforts and your time with us this morning. Thank you. I'm noticing the hour here, and I think I'd like to ask leave of the committee to continue our work and see if we can finish up our meeting rather than take a lunch break, if that's okay with the committee. I'm seeing nodding heads, so we will continue on. Unfinished business, we have none. Number 4, report from director, status on projects. I'll turn it over to Matt. Matt, you're on mute.
This should be quick and easy. Now that I'm on unmute, there haven't been any status changes since our last meeting. The only thing that's changed is we've added 2 more projects appear on the physical sheet that's in your notebook behind tab 4. Last time I just gave an oral report on those.
Questions or comments for Matt? Seeing none. The next item on our agenda is planning for upcoming meetings. So our next meeting will be 2 weeks from today, February 26th. And that agenda will include the public hearing, work session, and vote on the Pine Tree Development Zone 2 report. So that will be on our agenda for our next regularly scheduled meeting in 2 weeks. We also have received a request for a review from some legislators on the Wild Blueberry Commission. And so we will have that on our agenda for discussion as well. We'll be using the same version of the Zoom webinar platform for that. We'll be taking up the Wild Blueberry Commission request first, and we'll be inviting the legislative sponsors of that letter to come in and talk to us about their request. That'll be earlier on in the agenda, and our staff will help make sure those folks get that notice. And so with that, I believe we've completed our work for this morning. Matt, and did I miss anything? That getting head nods? No. Okay. Any other comments or questions from the committee? When I made the suggestion about lunch, I had no idea that the rest of our business was only going to take 2 minutes. So. Okay, well, I appreciate everyone sticking with us this morning. If there are no other comments or questions, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Representative McDonald has moved we adjourn.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Senator Keim. All those in favor, please raise your hands.